What's up, everybody? Jim and Bear back at it.
Hey!
Oscar and Timmy are MIA. I don't know where they're at. Anyway, welcome to another podcast of Average American 3 Beers Deep. Just remember, anything you hear come out of our mouth is not fact-based. It's opinion only. Some of the stuff probably will be fact-based, but I don't know if it is 100% or not. You do that. You do the work and look it up. But Bear, I gotta tell you, man, I had a hell of a week at work, buddy. Monday morning, 8:30, I go to my first no heat call. Right, knock on the door. Guy answers the door in a wife beater tank top and tidy whitey underpants.
Good morning. Scratch his belly.
Nah. He's like, oh man, I'm glad you're here. He's like, the furnace is over there. I'm like, alright. So I was like, whatever, man, like, whatever, like, it's early, maybe I woke him up, you know? I didn't really think much of it. He's like, the furnace is over there, man. He's like, you need anything from me? I'm like, no. He's like, alright, give me a holler when you're done. And he goes back in his room. I'm like, alright. So I do what I have to do, get the heat running, check it, make sure it's all working, go out to my truck, fill out the invoice on my tablet, and come back inside. I'm like, hello! He comes out in his fucking tiny whiteies and his tank top. I'm like, bro, I just need your signature. And he's like, how'd it go? I'm like, if we're going to have this conversation, sir, you need to put the pants on.
Facts.
I'm like, I ain't gay or homophobic, bro. I'm like, but that's a little too much. You're a grown-ass man. I'm like, you need to go put some pants on.
Yeah.
I was like, geez, what a way to start Monday morning, man. I had to tell a grown-ass man to put some pants on.
Yeah. Hit me with a beer.
Yeah, I was like, damn, bro. And then I think it was Wednesday. Like, we had that snow, what, 3 weeks ago now? 2 weeks ago, something like that? Right, that big snow?
Yeah.
Right after we had that big snowstorm, I went to a house to put some propane tanks in, and the hill was crazy to get to the guy's house. And I had this gas-powered hand truck, and normally the tanks that we reset out in the field, if we bring them back full, we dump them. We call it dumping from one tank to a bunch of other tanks, so there's about 20 gallons in each tank. So they're not so heavy because fulls are 800 pounds. Well, we've been super busy and we ain't had time to do it, so we were basically just resetting full 100-gallon tanks. And I'm like, there's no way if I try and like, drive the freaking thing over here and this thing starts sliding towards the house, I ain't stopping it, man. So I was like, bro, plus he still had like probably 80 gallons in the tanks that he had there. So I guess my girl was supposed to call and reschedule the appointment. She didn't call. The snow disappeared, and then it snowed again Friday. And he's like, "Oh, I'm out of gas, man. You guys got to come today." And I'm like, "I'm not going. It's Friday, man. I'm done." So long story short, I go there Wednesday, sliding these tanks down this big ass hill. We get them set. Me and this young guy that I work with. And as we're doing it, I hear screaming from inside the house. And I'm like, well, that's a fucking trailer park. Like, nothing to concern myself with, right? So like 25 minutes later, we're all done. I go inside to restart the heat. And the woman that answered the door is like, oh, she's like, I'm sorry, we're just having a bit of a problem right now. I'm like, is everything okay? She's like, oh, my mother just fell and we can't get her up. And I'm like, oh shit. So I tell the young man, I'm like, come on, man. Like, she was a woman, and then it was her mother that fell. So the woman that fell was like 70-something years old. Plus size. And then her father, so the lady's husband was there. I'm like, yo, these two ain't picking this woman up. So I'm telling the young guy that's with me, like, come on, man, let's go pick this lady up. He's like, I'm like, come on, man. He's like, I don't know if we should. I'm like, what do you mean, man? He's like, is it okay? I'm like, fuck yeah, it's okay. I'm like, the lady's stuck on the floor. So we get her picked up, and then we go out in the truck outside after we're all said and done. When I say he's a young man, actually a kid, but he's probably 26, 27 years old. But he was like all out of sorts. I'm like, bro, what if that was your mom?
You might want to kill that radio.
Oh shit. Yeah, that's a good idea. Too many beers, my cat. Sorry.
So to your point, there was I want to call it a social experiment because they got all the information and statistics on how we'd react to this. But when you took the average American and stuck him in a car and then had a mob of people attack him and they had to make a choice. Do I drive through that mob and make it home to my family? Or do I not be mean to the people that are attacking me and take a knee behind the wheel and hope they're just going to break my windows and rip my mirrors off and stab my tires and not do anything to me, right? You have to make a decision in that second because once your tire's stabbed, once your windshield's broke, once they're in their car, your choice is over with. So you have to look at that mob mentality and say, what am I going to do? So there was a point in time where we saw bodies getting flipped over cars because people weren't taking the chance. They were put in a situation where they had to make that choice. And it's that same decision that you're talking about right there.
That's what I mean. Like, I seen a woman
when you
who was in serious need of help, and I just sprung into action.
Right. But that
and this younger kid was like, yeah.
But the hesitation is the same hesitation that they've tried to implant in the Karen, so to speak.
Yeah.
To sit behind the wheel and shut your mouth and let them attack your car because they have the right to be angry.
Huh.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So submit. And we and again back to 9/11 as a nation under patriotism and the Patriot Act, which we understand. I'm hoping through all the Patriot Act was another way to tell America, hey, you're now all guilty. So we have the right to go through your pictures on your phone with Google, and we have a right to seize anything over 4 ounces at the airport, right, et cetera, et cetera. So you're gonna say, I accept the possibility of me being guilty for the safety of others. But at the same time, we're also in a patriotic way saying, I'm no longer an individual that does good. I'm guilty, so you need to check me, right? And that's a very scary way to look at us in society because just like average Americans, we're trying to figure out, like, what differentiates us from the next door neighbor, but what also is the exact same because I think we kind of want to raise our families in the same light.
Right.
But when we all look at each other as evil because, well, there's a reason why we're all going through the airport to get checked. There's a reason why there's metal detectors in the schools. There's a reason why there's metal detectors in the prisons. There's a reason why there's metal detectors going into museums, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And just like you guys were saying before, there's that same mentality when you walk in the food line, whether you're in a school or you're in a jail. It's also that same understanding that we need to take a knee to personal identity for the fact that we are all criminals and need to be seen as such until we're proven innocent. And that's not America. That's not America. Innocent until proven guilty is America. And what we're saying is we're guilty until proven innocent. And we've really...
Well, yeah, it's been that way in this country for a while now.
When you see a kid that doesn't want to help out, it's because A, he's afraid he might get sued for helping out. B, he doesn't have the emotional capability to handle the trauma. He doesn't have the common sense on how to look at a situation and assess it and how to we'll call it anxiety. He suffers from what's defined as anxiety because it doesn't have the tools to look at the situation and figure out how do I best handle this. Instead, he doesn't know how to handle it.
Yeah, but I couldn't help but think if I wasn't there. I couldn't help but think afterwards, if I wasn't there, what would that do? Like, he would have just let that lady sit there on the floor?
If it was his mother, he would have been looking for help and waiting for 911 to get there.
Yeah, maybe.
Am I wrong?
I don't know, but my point by saying to him that could have been your mother, like...
So where's his empathy and compassion?
But if that was your mother, wouldn't you want the two men that are here to help your mother?
That's why I say...
Like, instead of just being like, I don't know, man.
He lacks either the empathy and compassion, which is possible, and he doesn't see her as a human being that needs help. He sees her as a person that's not any part of his problem, and doesn't want to get help. Or he has no idea how to take care of his mom, so why should he start with her?
After it was all said and done.
Does he live with his mom?
No.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Not touching the
No. What got me was afterwards, when we were all said and done, we get the lady back in her. I guess she had just gotten out of the hospital and out of the rehab center, and she was trying to go to the bathroom with the walker, and I don't know. But all I know is there was an old lady crying on the floor, and she couldn't get up, and the two people that were there with her clearly weren't getting her up. What was that? Yeah. So anyway, so we picked her up. But afterwards, she was crying hysterical, thanking us, blessing us. Oh, God bless you guys. God bless you guys. And I said to him, like, bro, don't you feel a little good about yourself right now? Like, because you should.
Yeah.
Like, you just did a selfless thing, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not looking for a reward, not looking for payment. Just, there was an old lady on the floor who needed to be picked up, and we picked her up.
Joseph, my son, was going down the road, and he was about 4 houses down, and he was headed into work. And he was driving past, and he saw an older gentleman standing over a woman, and she was in an awkward position on the ground. So Joe immediately pulled over and went over. And
Where is this? Here in the neighborhood?
right here, yeah, just past Chuck's house. And he was like, "What's wrong?" And the guy was just crying, "Please don't die, please don't die." So Joe got down. He saw that the chick was clearly having she was twitching at this point.
Like a seizure or something?
Yeah, he didn't know what was going on. So she wasn't breathing right. So we started doing chest compressions. And as he's doing chest compressions, he sees people just driving past, and he was like, "Dad," it was kind of euphoric because nobody stopped to offer help or anything. They just kept driving past. And Joe's very compassionate, so he was trying to help the old man emotionally. And chest compressions are tough on you. And he also informed Joseph when he started that she had some kind of a thing in her chest. So
Like
he
a
had to
pacemaker or
avoid.
something?
He had to avoid her sternum. So he had to do it with his fingertips from the outside to push in to avoid the machinery in her chest. So it was even more hard. And compressions can get tiring. So anyway, it ended up where each time he was doing a compression, there was blood coming out. And it was possibly she had a brain hemorrhage or something when the paramedics got there, and she was considered DOA kind of thing. But my son was just blown away at how people just drove past and nobody felt that they had a better ability, or let's give this guy hands to give him a break because I have no idea how long he's been here, or are the paramedics called? And the ironic thing is that the old man didn't have a cell phone on him because he didn't believe in the technology. And there was 2 officers that came there, 2 troopers that came there, and the one trooper actually said to the guy, "Well, that's what you get basically for not having your cell phone on you," meaning her life is on your hands.
Yeah, that's kind of
And
fucked
my
up.
son Joseph is really intelligent, so when he heard that, his heart got hurt, for the old
Yeah.
man. You just give it a rest.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
and plus he's got
Yeah, the guy's just
Yeah,
lost
yeah.
his wife or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever
So
it was to him, yeah.
So when the second officer got there, he was a lot more compassionate and had a lot more bedside manner, a lot more old school. And I've realized lately that there's a lot of younger troopers and a lot of younger officers and a lot of younger local whatever it is, and when COVID happened, they did a clean sweep of the military, the hospitals, the schools.
Yeah,
If
anybody wasn't
you
gonna
didn't
get
agree
vaccinated.
with something,
Yeah.
then you were eliminated. And when we see something like your car insurance may get raised if you didn't get vaccinated because you're more likely to be risk takers, etc. There's a certain mentality. If you want to charge somebody more on insurance because they didn't get vaccinated, because it's the mentality that goes with it. Or there's a certain mentality that goes with not being vaccinated and saying, "Well, I'm not vaccinated, and you have the right to get vaccinated if you want. I'm not going to judge you for it, but don't tell me to." That's a freedom that I'm saying I want for myself and for you, and you're saying that your freedom is to tell me that I don't have my freedom.
Yeah.
Right? So there was a lot that changed, and when that changed, now all of a sudden they changed their Hippocratic oath for the doctors when they become doctors, and now there's a whole younger breed of doctors with a different mentality. Same thing with the police force. I saw a state trooper down here at Geneva Street the other day, and the kid looked like he was 16.
Yeah,
And it was scary because, okay, that's great, we have the young and upcoming, but what happened to the older, seasoned guys to be the mentors to the younger guys? Instead, the younger guys are coming in and they're understanding what they're being taught to understand as the rights of a sovereign citizen, but they're not really looking at a sovereign citizen. They're looking at a statistic, and they're looking at a social security number and a driver's license. And that changes what a human being is, because we're not sovereign citizens at that point. We're looked at on how to handle someone, and we're getting to a point where when you pull somebody over now, you can't just say I'm gonna let you go because you have to register in while you're pulling that person over. So there's no get out of jail free card. There's no Mr. Nice Cop. And I got stuck in a spot where, and I'm a pretty smart guy. I got to a spot in the road on 31, and there was a sign that had an arrow that pointed to the left, and it was like cross the double yellow line and go down that way because we're the only traffic going that way, or do we turn around in this gas station parking lot where there's no other thing to market and go back the other way because there's no one we're doing. So I slow rolled up to the cop that was sitting like against the traffic I'm going with.
Yeah.
It was one lane each way, and it's barricaded, and he was sitting in front of it, and I said, hey, brother, I said, am I supposed to go that way or through the park? And he goes, do whatever the fuck you want to do, everybody else is. And I was like, bro, I'm like trying to be reasonable here. Like, I'm not stupid, but I don't, is the arrow telling me to go through that one lane and it's closed down coming this way or what? And he was like, do whatever the fuck you want. And I was like, so I literally, because I had pulled so far forward just to initiate conversation with the officer, that I was already up to the point where I was past the entrance. And I didn't feel like putting it in reverse, so I literally went over the giant curb that was like this high. Because I'm like, no, I'm not great. I'm gonna get pulled over by this cop. But the cop didn't say a thing. When I looked back at him to like wave, he was just scowling at me. And I'm like, I know clearly I was wrong for hopping the curb with the truck. Like, out of anything I could have done, that was the wrong option.
Yeah, fuck
you know what I mean?
though, man.
But like, dude, I was trying to ask you, like, for real, and you're mad at me. So here's the thing. What I saw was an officer that was frustrated because his hands are tied. And everybody knows that if they don't get charged for X amount of dollars in their robbery, that they're not going to keep the charge. And as a store manager doing retail, etc., you know that you're not even allowed to accuse somebody as you watch them on camera directly, real time, put it in their pocket. You're not allowed to accuse them.
Accuse them or
you're not allowed to accuse them. You are not allowed to accuse them.
Huh.
You can confront them by offering them enough service to have them escort themselves out of the store as the police are called to try to, but you're not allowed to deal with the situation. You're not allowed to accuse them of that.
Huh.
Now, I dealt with that because I had to learn what the dance was for the customers in order how to keep them there or to get them away from the customers if they were considered to be a danger.
Yeah.
But you could not accuse them of stealing. You couldn't ask them if they accidentally put something in their pocket. You couldn't word it any way at all. And that was back in the early 2000s. You can only imagine what they're having to deal with now as far as the justice is that's always followed.
Well, I have a serious issue with the police, and I don't know if it's just because I don't like authority or what, but it basically all boils down to the simple explanation is the police in this country, well, I don't even say in this country, but in our neck of the woods and where I grew up, we're no longer there to serve and protect. They were there to bring revenue into their counties or their townships.
Okay.
You're right. There's no such thing as a free lunch. If you get pulled over for a taillight out, they're not looking to pull you over because you have a taillight out. They're looking to pull you over so they can get in your car and find contraband. Not everybody.
Or create revenue.
Right.
That $30 court cost.
Right.
3 of those, almost $100.
Right. Were you living here when the Eric Frame thing went on?
What was that?
That was
The guy that was running
the
around.
kid from Cresco that shot the cops up on 402.
And he was running around for a while, right?
58 days, I think it took him to catch him.
Yeah, yes. I wasn't here, but I was in Shawnee.
Okay. Well, it was pretty crazy around here. But anyway, when that all went down, there was just the manhunt went on for 58 days, I think. It was something crazy. And everywhere you went around here, there was just police cars. They had like SWAT teams running through backyards, chasing nobody, you know? Millions and millions of dollars spent. Everybody, they were at the
absurd.
Oh, completely absurd.
So here's my point to that. It was absurd because there's training programs, and it's called domestic training programs.
Well, what was absurd is that they're supposed to be looking for this dude, and down at the bottom of the street, there was 4 cops sitting in a car sound asleep with the fucking doors open. How are you looking for somebody, right? They're just soaking up the overtime. Right. Sound asleep,
no doubt,
right?
No doubt.
They stayed at the, I don't even know if it's even a hotel anymore, but right there where you get off of the highway, right before the next exit, the Marshalls Creek exit, at that light, there used to be like the Shannon Inn or something.
Yes.
That's where they had their command center and all the cops were staying in there. People were bringing them food and water and Gatorades and fucking sending meals and like they had
hospitality.
Yeah, like thanking them for being here. And then I'm telling you, that was over the summertime that happened, and then it was probably, I don't know, 2 weeks before Christmas. I was coming home from work on a Saturday or Sunday with my buddy, and I'm coming through the toll bridge, and there's cops with dogs standing at every fucking toll booth. This is before the Easy Pass was all in. They were just standing there, mass flagging people down, telling them to pull over, pull over, pull over, pull over. And they gave me a $217 ticket for an expired or not having my vehicle inspected. Now, granted, they were right. My truck wasn't inspected. But you're going to stand there and just fucking... They were just generating revenue because they spent so much looking for this dude. You know what I mean? And what I don't understand is when it all went down, you know, the DEA showed up, the FBI, the U.S. Marshals, but yet the state police they were still in charge of the hunt for the dude. And my father's a retired cop, so when I was talking to him about it, he's like, dude, he said something's real dirty. I'm like, what do you mean? He says, when he was on the job, whenever the FBI came in, they are the highest jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. So they take command of everything. Mm-hmm. Right? They come in and they take control, and all of us were just there for support to do what they told us to do. Mm-hmm. But with the Eric Frayne thing, the FBI came in and said, oh, we're just here to support you guys. So he's like, something's real fucking dirty with this case. He's like, what's going on? He's like, because the state police are still in charge.
It was a training program with the opportunity.
Maybe. But again, this is the community that you came out here to help, and we came out and we supported you guys. I'm telling you, man, there was food trucks that was just giving away food to these guys down there, and then 2 months later, 3 months later, 2 weeks before Christmas, you're just sitting there at the fucking toll booth. I'm telling you, man, there had to be 50 cops there.
Yeah.
All just sitting there writing tickets.
So, listen.
I'm like, this is insane,
I
man.
just had a conversation with a cop.
I'm like, this is fucking... How was this not entrapment?
He was a cop in Central Jersey. He wasn't in PA. I was talking to him with somebody I'm rather close to. Not about him, but with him, somebody I'm rather close to. He was a dark fella. And he was in a cop the next town over, and when he left, this gentleman asked me, he said, so what do you think about him? I said he's a personable guy. He talks good talk. He goes, yeah, but what do you really think? Because he trusted my input. And I said, you know that the guy's chasing, the guy's in his, 45, and you know he's chasing some 24-year-old tail, and he's married. So his wife can't trust him. Mm-hmm. He was in here preaching all kinds of crap about his wife. So he's using her to make him look good, but she can't trust him. So I'm going to point that out, number one. Number two, he's a cop. And you're talking about how he's making deals and having shenanigans, and I ain't just talking smoking weed with the guys from next door. So he's not even credible with his job. And now he's hanging out here, where y'all are having a good time, right? And he's eyeballing doors when they open, etc. So his job's still going through his mind. So what I've learned from him is that he's not trustable by his wife. He's not trustable by his job. He's not trustable being your home, basically. This is a place of business, but your home, so to speak, okay? And what he's going to do is whatever serves him best in whatever circumstance. So if he needs a get-out-of-jail-free card or a bonus card with his boss, he knows a place where he can cause some trouble, and that's your home.
That's right.
I said, so what do I think about him? I said, I think he's using a badge to make himself look good, a wife to make himself look good, and you to make himself look good in the community because he's walking out of your store. But when it comes time, he's going to burn his wife, burn his job, and burn you.
That's right.
So I don't trust him.
I always said that, man. We used to hang out at this one bar, man.
But that's one guy.
But we used to hang out at this bar, and there was always cops in there. And everybody said, oh, he's a good dude. He's a good dude. I said, you know what, man? That motherfucker's going to leave here drunk tonight, and tomorrow he's going to stop you and give you a fucking DUI.
Yeah, well, you know what I said? I said, what was he like in high school? Because they knew him in high school.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, he was kind of like the nerdy guy that never got. I was like, he's a pretty jacked up, good looking guy.
Yeah.
And like well kept, obviously good outfit, everything. He's sitting well.
Yeah.
And he makes himself look pretty. And he was buff, dude. I said, he couldn't get like, nah, he was a nerd. I said, oh. I said, so what? He got a baton now and a badge, and he thinks because the store I was in happened to get robbed. And his first conversation that I ever met him, he was talking about how I just capped him in the head. if I was here up on the scene. Like, let me come up a minute sooner to see what was going on. And I'm like, you're gonna take pride in having the ability to shoot a guy like you're a gangster because you have a badge that gives you the right to do that, and you have the law to back you up on it. That's not cool. That's not how you should be going. It's that, and not only that, but all right, you might be a black guy, and that might be a Spanish guy, but like, it's still a human being. Like, you're not looking at them as such. You're looking at, like, I have an opportunity to pull my gun. And if you don't feel that way, how dare you present yourself in such a manner in front of such a young crowd?
Yeah.
And I'm the same age as him, but the rest of the cats were younger. If you're in such a young crowd, that's the way you're presenting to your department. And why should they respect you when you have to draw your gun because you got a bunch of young punks? No, you're just some other cheese puff that they got under the belt. And okay, so you have the jock that got the baton, and now they get to be a jock asshole and get to beat people for no reason, kind of thing. You have the nerd who didn't get the girl, so he gets to flash a badge and call that his. Or you have a person who does bad things and gets to use the badge to make himself appear good, right? You have the dirty cop. You have the cop who's pissed off at the stop because everybody else just blows through and ignores the fact that he's there.
Yeah.
And he knows the reason why they're driving past is because they don't have to listen to it because he's just a cop.
Right? Yeah.
Okay, but then there's also the cops, just like the teachers, just like the doctors, just like the lawyers, just like the judges, who got their profession because they wanted to do better for humanity. And then when they got to, the system was so corrupt that either they were removed because of law, or because of local ordinance, or because of local blah blah blah, or politics, or something was brought up from their post where they said they only believed in two genders, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Right? They were removed, and now we have an entire new regime of military, of hospital care, of everything across the board. Teachers for kids, right up through. There is a different mentality there, and I think that there's still some cops and some doctors and some teachers that have really held out and made it through COVID and made it through the restrictions and made it through the judgments. And
I don't say all cops are bad. It's just the whole how
I think right now it's even more brutal for them than ever because they've seen what happens when evil becomes good and good gets called evil. Because they were good and they stood their ground. And there may be some of us decided not to do certain things that we would have lost that job if we decided to, and those people stuck it out. And the majority of them lost their jobs. A few of them didn't. They're the last men standing, the last women standing.
Yeah, but are the ones that are still on? Are they the ones that complied? You know what I mean?
There had to be lines.
You talked to my brother.
There had to be lines of limitation for some people, and each state had a different program. Each town ordinance had a different program within the state. So they got their data, they got their statistics, they were able to record all that information while getting us to understand there's a program in place.
When the vaccine mandates were coming down, my job was like, how do you guys feel about this? And I said, well, I'm not taking it. And they're like, even if it's mandated and you'll lose your job? I'm like, yep. So then that was, that talk came from the big boss at one of our monthly safety meetings. And then next safety meeting, the guy that's next down below him is a guy's my age. He's all right. I mean, I don't trust the dude as far as I can throw him, but we have a good repertoire between the two of us. But he came to me, pulled me outside after the meeting. He's like, dude, you really want to take the vaccine? I'm like, nope. He's like, why not? I'm like, because I don't think I should have to. I said, we were essential workers with this little fucking piece of paper you guys printed out and told us we had to carry. I said, and it was okay for me to go into these fucking people's houses pre-vaccine, right? And it was okay for me to continue working and work 70, 80 hours a week. So a lot of the guys, believe it or not, a lot of the truck drivers that work at my company, they've all been with the company 30 plus years. Yeah. So they're all 50, 60 something years old. And they were like, yo, fuck this, man. I got 5 years of sick time left that I got to use before retirement. A lot of the guys, they just, started using all their unpaid time. Yeah. So we were short staffed, man. I made the most amount of money I ever made in my life during COVID. We were working like crazy. Anyway, but the boss was like, he's like, you're really not going to take it? I'm like, no, man. You're not going to tell me it was okay for 2.5 years.
How recent was this second attempt?
Well, when were they? I guess it was a year ago, right?
So it was about a year between the first question and second question.
Oh no, it was a month.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get,
Yeah. No, we had our monthly
How long did
safety
it take
meeting.
for that second?
So we had our monthly safety meeting, and the big boss came, and he was saying, look, the government's going to mandate this. They did the whole bullshit with, they came to us and said, oh, if any of you guys want to go get the vaccine, we're willing to pay you half a day's pay to go get vaccinated. And I said, well, isn't that convenient? I said, because the federal government's giving you, any company that had more than 12 employees, the federal government was offering up like $560 per employee that was vaccinated. But you're going to give me half a day.
Wait. Conspiracy what?
Right. You're going to offer me half a day's pay.
Yeah, I'm
But
talking
the-
about the government paying
Yeah,
the
yeah,
company
yeah.
trying to sway
Right.
people because the government...
Right, exactly. That's exactly what they're trying to do. Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was like, yeah, I'm not going to get vaccinated.
Wait, to your point, real quick, how many companies didn't make it through that payoff because they refused to, and they failed, right? So they went belly up because they didn't get the government grants and the government supports that they were allowed to. So those companies were allowed to stay afloat because when the other people had to close their doors because of certain local regulations and stuff, right? They didn't make it through daycares, all the rest of this stuff that happened. They closed during that time. You see where I'm going with that?
I do.
Okay. All right. Sorry. I just had to
No,
point out that.
but don't let me forget about oil. After this conversation, I'll tell you about the crazy shit with oil. So after they were offering us the 4 hours pay, then the next step obviously was the Biden administration was going to mandate this when they were mandating all the military, and if you work for the federal government, you have to get it, and they were trying to push it on everybody.
Doctors, teachers,
So
military.
So the big boss is actually ex-military. He's a straight up dude, man. Good,
the
straight
big
up
boss,
good
the
guy.
one that came to you first time.
Yeah.
And listen, straight up, kudos for having the heart and compassion to reach out to people and find out what their general understanding was first, because that's the right thing to do.
Well, so that's what he did. He came to us to talk to us about it prior to it coming, and he's like giving us a heads up, like, yo, look, this may be coming. And he was straight up like, if you guys don't want to get it, and you don't want, you don't want to work here because of it, he's like, I completely understand. He's like, I hate to lose any of my men. He's like, but
Oh, so he saw it as a decision that you had to make whether or not you kept your job coming up, possibly.
yeah,
As we all
yeah.
as
Well,
we
because
all
the
did.
federal
So,
government was like, everybody is
yeah,
going to
we
mandate
thought we
everybody.
couldn't walk in
Right.
the grocery store, so I get it.
Yeah, right. So I was like,
We're
all
getting
right.
there.
Yeah, so then the following safety meeting, because it's the third Wednesday every month we have our safety meeting, that's when the guy below him, because he's kind of a conspiracy theorist too, the lower boss, John is his
Okay.
name. So John was like, Jim, he's like, what do you think, man? I'm like, I'm not taking it. He's like, you're not going to take it? I'm like, nope. He's like, you're going to lose your job? I'm like, yeah. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, dude, I'll die on that fucking hill, man. Like, you're not telling me I can put it in I'm going to put a experimental drug in my body. I'm not going to do it. Like, I'm sorry. I'm like, and if they tell my kids they have to go to school, they're not going to school no more. We were actually worried about that with our little one because he was still in the foster system at that point. And we thought for sure they were going to make us take him to get vaccinated, and we were like, that ain't going to happen. But it never did come to that with them. But anyway, so towards the end, I would say, what is it, 2024, so it was probably 2021. It was like June, May or June. And I don't normally deliver fuel, but when we get real busy, like I'll get in the truck and deliver fuel oil. Like when, there's been a few times over the years where they're like, all right, shut down the propane service department and put the two guys in the fucking oil trucks or the propane truck because we're just that backed up because it's that cold, It was like end of May, early June. And they're like, hey, Jim, you want to work Saturday? I'm like, fuck yeah. And then they're like, you want to work Sunday? I'm like, Sunday too? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you guys, like, we get double time on Sundays, no matter what. So I'm like, you got, right? I'm like, you're okay with that? I said to the oil guy, the oil manager, he's like, yeah, we're okay with it. I'm like, and you want me to deliver oil? I'm like, he's like, yeah. I'm like, all right. So for like 3 weekends, man.
You're making me earn it like
Sundays.
this compared to what I usually do, right?
Well,
Your job's not easy.
no, yeah. I'd much rather go, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, why don't the guys bitch
Siphon
about
some shit, you're good.
The one other guy I work with, he kind of complains about having to go deliver oil because he don't like it because you get it on you, it stinks. But
Right.
I'm like, you know what, dude? When it's 0 degrees outside, I'd much rather be in the warm cab of that truck than fucking outside looking up in propane tanks
That's
or
what I mean. Yeah.
crawling
yeah.
through shitty freezing basements or something. You know what I mean? Like that's a much more comfortable place to be. But it was like I said, it was like May or June, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And I'm making these oil deliveries, and I'm delivering like 35 gallons. I'm like, if a 275 gallon tank took 100 gallons, it was a lot.
Were people trying to get stuff in their tank because they were afraid COVID was going to happen? They didn't want to miss out on not being able to get it later.
No, we were trying to deplete our inventory because there was an overabundance of home heating oil at that point because they made so much more, and now people were starting to go back to work, and there was an overabundance of home heating oil, so
Understood.
they were paying us 55 cents a gallon to take it. So they're like, my company nationwide, the company that I work for on the East Coast, I believe we have 50 million gallon storage.
Wow.
Oh, I think that's in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And then there's another, I think 40,000 in Dover, New Jersey. But like, there's these companies scattered all over the place that if we could keep saying, yeah, we'll take it. Because they had to get rid of it because they needed to make room to make summer blend stuff. Diesel fuel, gasoline, and shit like that. Because I'm thinking, like, why the fuck are they saying it's 65 degrees out, 70 degrees out during the day, and 55 at night? Like,
Nothing
people don't
adds up.
burn. I'm like, this is fucking weird. And they're like, hey.
And they're paying me double? Yeah.
Well, yeah, because
nothing
they're
adds
getting-
up. Yeah.
right.
Now it adds up because their money adds up.
Right, because they're getting $55 a barrel. So every 50, they're getting a penny a gallon to take it.
You got the vaccine, you got solar, etc. What do? First they say, we're gonna give it to you for free.
The solar.
Yeah, and the vaccine. Then they're gonna market it to you. Then they're gonna offer you money for it. And then they're gonna persuade your neighbors to hate you for it and turn against you for it and take your job for it.
Wow.
And then it went away and it disappeared.
Yeah. That was crazy how they were like, oh, if your neighbors are having a party, you should call the police on them. That was crazy.
I didn't have Thanksgiving at my house.
I know, you told me that.
I had Thanksgiving out of my house because I had a family member whom I love ask me not to be there because I wasn't vaccinated. And I said, you know what? I don't need this. And if you're really that scared, hopefully someday you'll understand that I wasn't a threat and I never meant to be a harm. So I happily went and I had a Big Mac, extra sauce, extra pickles meal down by Hidden Lake out by me and Shawnee. And it was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And I love my girl enough to like walk away from it and say, I get that this particular person is that scared because it's a lot of information they handle. I just wish she wouldn't be so angry with me for having an understanding of it. That's where I came out of it. And that's really what it came down to, was a lack of understanding. So what it came down to me was just a simple common sense of, okay, so you're telling me that if I don't get vaccinated, that makes me a threat to you. Excuse me? There's no common sense in that.
No.
Zero. So that's why I stopped my argument. If you want to go further into mRNA and what that is, and you want to be intelligent, I can go down that road too, but I'm not trying to make you feel stupid. So let's just look at common sense.
What blew my mind was...
So, but like, here's the thing. Just like that kid couldn't be rational enough to say on his own without you being a big dad there and saying, hey, kid, like, this is an opportunity to help someone. What's wrong with you? My partner couldn't say, hey, you're being irrational, because the emotions of that person were unable to comprehend that you're being irrational and thought him getting the vaccination isn't going to protect you. That wasn't the criteria that was told to this person, so that person could never hear that rational...
Yeah, but how were you being irrational on that part?
I was being irrational because...
Because it's her daughter, right?
I was being irrational because I wasn't listening to what the statistics were saying, which is, get it or you're going to kill old people. Get it or you're going to kill impoverished people. Get it or you're going to kill people of color. And get it, you're going to kill old people, right? And all these things like, okay, so your dad got vaccinated under your advice because you understood that he had physical ailments that could lead him to be more susceptible.
Comorbidities, for sure.
Exactly, without a doubt. Same thing with flu or anything else. We understand that, right?
Well, my thought process wasn't even so much that. My thought process was, I think my dad's 76.
What's going to happen at this point? He's not reproducing and having children, so it's not. Gonna
I said it
carry
to
on.
him. It was probably kind of obtuse, I guess, but I was like, Dad, I'm like, you're 74 years old. By the time any of the side effects,
What do you got to lose?
you're gonna be gone, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? By the time any of this shit catches up to you, like, it ain't gonna catch up to you.
Right,
So that was my thought process. That was also my thought process with my children. Why I didn't want them getting vaccinated.
Because they have so much time to go.
Yeah,
That's-
yeah. Because if there's any long-term repercussions to having it,
So where you and I look at it,
they're the generation that's
they
gonna.
call this a novel virus, which means to me that this is the first time they're dealing with something like this. Clearly, it was bioengineered or genetically engineered in a lab.
I think it was genetically modified.
It was.
Yeah.
It was a whole bunch of crap. So, and what it's meant to do is actually interrupt the first step after the DNA is produced.
Wait. I need to interrupt you.
All right.
Hold on to that thought because I do know that one of the guidelines on YouTube we have to say that the vaccine is good. It helps. It slows the spread.
Am I allowed to disagree because you agree?
Huh? I'm just pointing it out so that we don't get flagged and get taken over YouTube for it.
I think
It's safe and effective.
that the tiniest, and it was recently defined that virus is the smallest form of life. That was just recently put into our understanding is that a virus is the smallest form of life. So, what
So is a germ.
a lot of people have asked me because I initiate a lot of conversation with strangers. What was the good that came out of COVID? If you have such a great God, or if this was et cetera, what came out of COVID? And COVID gave us the opportunity to look at ourselves and realize that we're going to die. And and it was amazing because it honestly gave us such a reason to panic and look at life and say, crap, I could get this and die in like a week. Because that's the way it was being portrayed. So it gave everybody across the globe, across the planet, to be able to say, well, because it was announced to everyone. Didn't matter whether you were illiterate or not, or whether it was everywhere.
Yeah. Everywhere.
So we actually had a moment in time where before all this other madness kicks in, which it did shortly after and because of this, we had the ability to look at ourselves and say, we're going to die. I need to contemplate what this life is for. And that's what COVID gave us a chance to do. And unfortunately, people died. That's what happens when the flu or whatever else comes around, right? And we realized that those numbers were just about the same. We know people that died from pneumonia or died from the flu or whatever, and then we also know people that died from COVID, right? So, go ahead.
What I thought was very strange about the whole thing is my dad's wife, my stepmother, her mother, Josephine, died when she was 101. And they listed her as a COVID death. I remember talking to my stepmother about it. I'm like, really? She's like, what? I'm like, she died from COVID? She's been in bed for 5 years. I stopped going to see her because every time I was there, she'd ask me to pray to God to take her tonight for her. I'm like, this woman did not want to live any longer. Did COVID kill her, or was she 101? Because she could sneeze the right way to 101
So now to your
years old
point,
and die.
we all saw the clickbait, the scroll stuff where they were talking about how the doctors were now being directed to lift something as COVID if COVID was even part of the story, right? So I think there's enough of us that have seen loved ones that have gone through things where they understand it wasn't documented properly. But when you have a clean sweep of a certain mentality of doctors, and then you bring in a group of doctors who no longer take the same oath and no longer have the same standards and no longer have the same education because they're allowed to have lesser education because now they're short on doctors because they got rid of the good ones.
Well, that's the DEI thing.
Right.
That's all.
Diversity and inclusivity and I understand inclusion. So, like, that's the reality of it. So now you have a lesser version of quality because you wanted to fill it with a certain type of person. So now you're not getting the same care. And you also have, just like you want to raise your insurance for non-vaccinated, et cetera, you've removed that mentality. So now you have a plethora of doctors who are new in it, still wet behind, not even wet behind the ears yet, and they're still trying to get their flippers on, and they're sitting there schooling you on how to take care of yourself and what danger you are to society for not getting a vaccine, Because you could kill somebody else by not getting the vaccine, and if it's a person of color, how dare you for not caring about them because they're too ignorant to know where to get the vaccine from.
Yeah,
And it's like, wait a second. Wait a second. Did everything that Joe Biden say in the medical industry, was that completely really prejudiced? Was that offbeat?
Right.
Right now.
Well, it's the same thing. It's the same thing with why you can't have a voter ID, because
so now what you have is you have
certain classes and certain ethnicities
don't
of
know where to
people
go get it.
can't get it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
They're too fucking stupid. That blew my mind, dude.
We're gonna
when I
touch the
saw them.
border in a second. So anyway, so what they did was they did a clean sweep of the hospitals. They put new people that are willing to take orders and not think about it. And they're also vigilantes and willing to put their jobs on the line that they were just handed because they've been upgraded from not needing these criteria to upgraded to now you meet the same qualities that needed those criteria for years. And now that you have the mentality of, well, you're not going to get out of here without getting a vaccine because it's the right thing to do for yourself, your neighbor, and racial justice and environmental justice and everything else.
Well, it goes back to what I say, man. You gotta worry about yourself.
So, just like they did that sweep with the doctors, they did the same thing with the cops and with the teachers. And I know I keep restating that, but these are the people who are fundamental in how our society works. And when we leave our children to be educated, protected, and taken care of by these groups, it tells our children that we trust them. And when we send our kids to school, or we allow the internet to educate our kids and other people, and we don't look at it for ourselves as this is what they're teaching us, we don't know to teach against what they've been taught. So when a child is taught you can identify as a boy or a girl at 12 years old, and as a parent to you that's absurd because they shouldn't have any sexual identity. You don't know that that's been planted. And then when they turn on the TV that's prepared for children, and they hear this on their cartoons.
Oh yeah, dude.
And they're made to be proud of a gay pride parade, which is a sexual identity, and most definitely portrayed as such. You would never think that Blue's Clues would be bad for a kid, but then you see that agenda on there, and you're like, but you're hate speech if you say that that's an agenda. No, you're sexualizing the children. Well, as a quote-unquote Christian right male, you try to sexualize your child to see a woman is beautiful if you're a male, and a male is beautiful if you're a woman, and get married to the opposite sex, because that's the way you believe it, so you are putting in a sexual agenda. No. I'm raising my kids in a loving household until it's appropriate to teach them that. Now I have to teach my kids that it's wrong to teach them that, so now that you're highlighting them, and I got grown men doing booty dances in front of my child in preschool, that's a stripper.
Yeah.
I'm not cool with my child going to see a woman stripper. I'm not cool with my child going to see a male stripper. So you're teaching them, and once you murky that line, now the teachers are out that disagree with bringing a man in a thong.
Dude, could you imagine though? Think about it like this is what fucking blows my mind and how fast things change, right? Like, if I was 10 years old, right? So 36 years ago, I'd be 10 years old. If certain people found out that my parents took me to a gay pride parade the way they are now, with fucking weirdos walking around half naked on leashes and all this crazy ass shit that goes on.
It's Rome and Greece all over again.
But I'm telling you, dude,
Rome never died.
my parents, they would have taken me away from my parents.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Now it's flipped.
It completely flipped.
Good has become evil, evil has become good. And defending your children.
Bro, wait. So, for anybody watching doesn't know, I have an adopted son. We had to take a class, right? Now,
I'm going to
Connor's
specify.
not African American.
I was going to specify. He's a white
Irish kid.
Irish
He's an Irishman.
male.
Right.
And one of the most
We had to take a class.
innocent children. Go ahead.
We had to take a class on how to deal with ethnic hair. I'm like, the kid's not ethnic. And then we had to take a class on embracing his sexuality and his choices to be straight, gay, or bi, or...
And how old was he at this point?
Oh, I mean, he's 5 years old, so...
Yeah, so it was before 5 years old, people. That's crazy.
Well, so... I don't think that the class was designed specifically pointing to us for Connor, but it was the general thing for everybody who
But
was.
part of inclusion is making sure that you understand.
But it was for everybody in the foster system. So if you had a foster child or foster daughter, you had to take these classes. And I'm like, yeah, but this shit doesn't pertain to me and my situation.
That's where they're trying to teach you that you don't understand,
Yeah, that I'm wrong.
that you are wrong.
Yeah. It was crazy, and then it was funny too because I remember going through this, watching these videos. We had to do like it was like 20 hours of training or some shit. So like every night after work, I fucking sit down at the table and watch these stupid videos and listen to this lady have a conversation with some other lady on Skype. It wasn't even in person. So I'm like, this is the stupidest shit.
Less accountability.
No, well, that's what I said. I said to my wife, "It's probably a good thing that it was done this way because I would not have been able to keep my mouth shut through the whole 20 hours."
Not only that, but how impersonable is it to deal with a Skype? Same thing with the courts and everything else. All it's doing is preparing us to have to deal with
Yeah, but
AI.
I wasn't interacting with them. The class was literally one woman Skyping with another woman,
Oh.
talking to each other,
So you watched the
giving a
video?
lesson, kind of like what we're doing right here.
Really?
Yeah.
Very humane. Way to be compassionate, loving, and humane,
Yeah.
and be personable.
Yeah, and then I got to take a test based on what the lesson was.
Just like in school and just like in the military. Did you learn your indoctrination?
Yeah.
Can you recite it to us?
The indoctrination is real, man.
No doubt. No doubt.
So that you said what was a good thing about that came out of COVID, and that right there is
What's
a
that?
great thing. Is that I think since people were home and they were seeing the shit that they were seeing on mainstream news outlets, they started doing their own research and doing their own homework and realizing, yo, this is just an indoctrination. Like, they're just telling us this. Like, there's no fact base behind anything that the news is telling us.
Hey, when you guys want to look something up on the internet, I want you to try to experiment with something.
Oh, not that bestiality thing again, is it?
No. Told you not online. Look something up. Google something up, and it'll say 20,000 searches or 40,000 searches or something crazy that are found when you type in those keywords that you're looking for. But then when you scroll through, the further you go down, the more that you realize that it's the exact same articles put out by different places. And it's over and repeat and repeat and repeat. And then when you start looking at it more and more, you realize that 20,000 articles that are available on Google search
We're written by
is
three
actually
authors.
exactly.
Yeah.
So when you're doing your research, it's really it becomes what gives you the right to think that you're correct when I found this, and that's because we each have our own little node on a super cool computer, and there's statistical information that can bring each type of group of people for whatever identity is that they have, whether it's the marketing that they steer towards, or the music they steer towards, or the videos they steer towards, or the clickbait, or the news they go towards.
Yeah, it's the
that all
algorithms
creates,
right,
that creates quote unquote an algorithm, or it creates an industry for commercialization of your avatar, so to speak. So when they're able to do that, what they're doing is they're catching the essence of each one of us, and each one of those essences is a node on a giant computer system, which is like one brain in operation.
Yeah, and they're feeding us the answers that they think we are looking
Exactly.
for. Yeah.
So if you're gonna lean towards, we'll say, some pivotal images, Trump, or Obama, or let's see, Michio Kaku, the Asian guy that from the New York State University does all kinds of weird stuff with Neil deGrasse Tyson, type of guy.
I think that Neil deGrasse Tyson is an arrogant.
I do too, and I don't like him, and he really does. I'd love to have talk with him to explain some of his shortcomings. But anyway.
Well, you're so cocky and arrogant. You can't have a
that
conversation
too.
with the guy. Like,
That
what?
too.
You can't be wrong.
No, that too.
Like,
yeah. So point is that they are able to bring us to the same veins. We're a bunch of arteries. they're able to bring us to the same veins of information. And what we're not realizing is that they're really, if you live under certain circumstances, and you constantly look up certain videos and certain type of thing, that's what's going to come to you. Because they call it the algorithm or how they commercialize you.
Yeah.
But the reality is that they're using those excuses of sales, etc., to actually pitch something even stronger, which is how to change our heart and how we view things. Because the more times you see violence, the more easy you are to accept it, whether it's in a movie or it's in a music video or whatever else. So the more times that you see it, the more likely you are to accept it. So if you give someone and you bring everyone to a rage on each side, and then you bring them together, of course they're going to fight, right? But if you bring them to a rage on each one of their undivided sides, and you say, well, you're people, and then you create animosity and confusion within those people, and you say, yeah, but you're going to fight amongst yourselves about that, and you still have an enemy over here, keep your eye on them. Well, when you look at the dollar bill, you see an American eagle, and that has one head and two wings, Democratic and Republic. It's still being steered by one head and one mind. And it's really important to think about, because when you look at the pyramid, you have the all-seeing eye. It's the same thing as the eagle. And if you look at the Roman and the Greek coins, they both had the same thing. They had that eagle. That eagle isn't old. The Romans took it over from the Greeks, and the Romans never died. If you look at Germanic ancestry, etc., and then you look at a lot of stuff that goes into America, that Germanic stuff is there, but if you look at Lady Liberty, etc., those things all come from the Roman culture. And there's a reason why it's here. It's because the Roman culture never died, and it's something very scary to think about for us here in America. But we came here from another country trying to create something new, and the things that we came here to get away from: slavery, taxation without representation, the freedom to have land that we wanted here, etc. We came here because we saw what was going on over there, and when we tried to establish things here, the industry, the slavery, the toxic stuff that we were doing to the land, to the air, to the people, and everything else, that followed afterwards, and then the Constitution, etc., came into bloom because there was two competing sides, and they had to come to an agreement.
Right.
Okay? And what happened was that the old ideas were never lost because there's still the empowerment of money. When the Civil War happened, both sides of the Civil War went to the same banking system, which was owned by the country that we came from originally. So do the math on that. And then on top of it, when the Civil War was over with and we had to pay reparations to the banks because the slaves were considered property, we had to pay as a country back in taxes to the bank that owned the slaves in order for us to free them, which put us all into the same category as the slaves, because now we all are slaves to that financial system. And it was made to impound, so we'd never be able to pay it back. So when we talk about reparations now, how far do you want to go with that as far as who owes what, which is a whole other question. But when you look back at that circumstance, we're all being beat to death because we're still answering to the financial system we tried to get away from in the first place. And they not only were the go-between that owned the slaves as property, that were buying it from the Africans, that were selling them, etc., but now they're brought here, and to be completely honest, however you want to pervert it, doesn't matter, but slavery was never seen as something that was supposed to be the way that it is portrayed. It's not supposed to be like that. One man's not supposed to own another man like that in this time, in this day. We have become something greater than that, and that's what America was built on, and then all of a sudden those rules and regulations follow us over here. And it tore this country apart, and we had a civil war because of it, and the banking system was like, well, you have a financial problem, and guess what? We have the checkbook here for you to write that problem away. On both sides. And we're going to supply war on both sides, ammunitions and caskets on both sides. And then we're going to look back on this history and go, oh, we fought for the freedom from slavery. No. We were two groups that were put against each other in a country because we came here to step away from that country. And that country said, oh, we're going to let you function amongst yourselves, and then we're going to be the rulers of this country still. So when we look at our documentations and we look at our difference between being a sovereign citizen and a citizen that has a birth certificate, a driver's license, a social security card, and now we understand what that stuff means. Wait a second. So what did we sign up for? We signed up to the banking system, that we're a valid credit to that banking system. We're seen as a monetary value, as chattel, and not human beings, because if we're willing to live in this system, then we aren't willing to think for ourselves. So why don't we think for ourselves? The people that we're answering to don't care about us. And it doesn't matter if you're white or black. And it doesn't matter what level you are in finance. Okay? And they just did a clear sweep again. The military, the hospitals, the schools, and they just did a clear sweep on all of it, and they made sure that if there was a certain mentality, we're going to get a majority of you out. So now when you see those military men and women standing up and saying, we're taking humans out of the loop and we're allowing AI to take over, now who's going to be responsible for the machines that kill?
Yeah, but
That's
my
a
thing
serious
about
question.
my thing about the AI is it was developed by humans,
Well, it was developed by
so it
humans.
can't be perfect.
It's perfect for what it's meant to be. And if it's meant to lock and box, if it's meant to entrap, if it's meant to read minds, if it's meant to not allow a husband to lie for his wife or a wife to lie for their husband, even though what they're lying for is not bad, but because now it's a microaggression or a racial problem, and now your partner can't stay with you because now they don't meet the social standard criteria. And now if you bring a food home that's beyond your calorie content, you're in trouble for supplying food to your partner. We're getting there. We're getting there. We're getting there.
We will be there.
We're getting there. No,
I don't think
we're
so.
There.
I don't think so.
I know we are. We're
Mm-mm.
there. This is a different topic. We're there.
I don't
We're
think
there.
so.
We have the stuff on our streets. We have the stuff in our homes, and we have the technology there to do it. And I'm sorry to say, but I don't. I have stuff that gets filtered to me, yes, but I also go out and I look up things. I listen to universities. I listen to lectures. I listen to panels. I listen to top scientists. I listen to ethics boards. I listen to changes in law. I listen to the things that are actually currently happening. And then I look at what the media and what the movies and what we're portrayed to understand is. And I see that the movies and everything that we used to understand as futuristic stuff is now catching up to what we're living now.
I think
iRobot, etc., all that things that we used to look at as futuristic. Now when you look up Russian robots, or look up Sophia the robot, who is now in the United Nations, and a citizen of a country, and she's on the United Nations. She's a 100% robot. She's got citizenship, and she's on the United Nations. She's there and has clout.
I think that
That's real.
I think that the current administration that we have right now thinks that the American people are way stupider than what we actually are.
No, not stupider, but we're willing to not listen to our guts and what's right for taking a knee because we have to have compassion for someone who's less fortunate or for someone we can't see. Like, you need to go to work and pay for someone you can't see because someone's got their hand out, and guess what? They don't have to feel bad because nobody can see them.
True. But I think the shit going on with the border
Accountability.
and in Texas, the shit that's going on in Texas.
Accountability is what it comes down to.
It does come down to accountability. But I think the shit going on in Texas is going to be the start of the.
But they want it that way. I was just looking at stuff. Think about this. When you see these clickbait videos and stuff, there's a reason. But what we're not seeing when they put these things, the barbed wire up, etc., what we're not seeing and understanding is the barbed wire on the airport fences are facing in because they're supposed to keep people in from the airports. They just redid how many train lines going all around the country because now you see stacks and stacks of new train line beams from underneath railroad ties that have been replaced. And lines that weren't in use and lines that are in use that have been redone and reinforced across the country just like that. At times of war and at times of protection, how do they transport humans and goods? Through the cars. How do they transport Auschwitz, the gulags, everything else? How do they transport people? They got them outside of the town so there was no emotional attachment. And then when people did have emotional attachment, they were throwing bread at them as they were being taken off. They were throwing rocks at them and hitting them through the broken glass in the cars as they were being taken off. They were laughing at the humans as they were being taken to death camps because the government was able to create such a divide and a look as to what is a human being. Well, if you're a Christian, now people don't get this about Hitler, about Nero, about all these other people. Jehovah's Witnesses, what was done to Jehovah's Witnesses in Nazi Germany was disturbing. They were the worst of the worst that were allowed to be experimented on as far as peeled and taken apart and sewn together because they were considered the biggest threat. Christians, also a big threat. Jews were highlighted. And it's really odd to me that Jews were highlighted because there was so many other groups of people that were also experimented on to the point of death and that were tortured to death, and that were worked to death, and that were executed. It wasn't just the Jews. But what happens is the Nazis found a psychological way to captivate the people and turn them against themselves to the point where even while church bells were going off that could be heard from the concentration camps, people were still attending church and turned their backs on those people that they should have seen as human beings. So to most people's points, including your brothers, the point of religion, that's where religion's evil, because those people in those concentration camps were asking themselves, so there's your churches. I can hear the bells, and I can see the smokestacks, and I can smell the men that I was just camped with burning because they're dead. Because they were starved to death and worked to death and tortured to death. And I watched them, their lives be terminated. I watched the death take over their eyes before their bodies gave out. Right? I can hear those church bells. So they had two questions to ask. Where's your God now? Or how could you turn your backs on us? And a lot of those people came out of that camp with a stronger understanding of God because they saw the evil of humanity and what good can do in such a horrific position.
Yeah.
But what we're not walking away with now is that our government's doing the same thing to us that happened to the Germans. They were politically swayed, and they were scientifically swayed, and they were morally swayed to understand that human beings can be lesser than human, and that they shouldn't be treated as human. And we're looking at people in an evolutionary sense, ape to brown to non-ape-like. And that's exactly where all that understanding came from. And evolutionary theory was to separate and to prove through evolution that people of a certain look are less valuable because they're closer to our ancestors than what we've evolved into now. And that's where that evil understanding came from. And then you get into genomics, and you want to get into genocide of people because of the way that they look or where they came from. And that's where we are now. That's really where we are now. And not only that, but now we look at people under a certain age and we're able to genocide them. And it used to be called abortion, but now we're allowed to keep the fetus viable for 28 days post-birth. 28 days post-birth. Have you ever held a newborn that was 28 days after birth? That's a very real...
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's emotional and it's moving, and it will change your life, especially if it's your own child and you saw it birth. So when you think of a 28-day post-birth baby, fetus, I'm sorry, you want to call it fetus.
No, it's a baby.
Right?
No, it's a baby.
So that can be kept alive 28 days post-birth so that the tissues and the stem cells, etc., are all still viable for science and to help the greater good. We are now allowing what used to be, and I never considered it questionable, but to an uneducated person questionable as to how small is small when you can start considering it life, and is it the size of it or is it a pond? All those lines got murkied enough to the point where now it's post 28 days after birth that baby can be kept alive. So that's how far we've gotten.
Yeah, and isn't that the same amount of time that certain states want to allow abortions up to? You can abort a baby up to 30 days after it's born?
Well, no, the baby can be born and then be kept vital, kept, I forget what the exact word is, but it can be kept well enough, comfortable, and well enough so that all the things in it are still pumping and flowing properly so that they can extract that when needed. They have to get it to a place to dissect it and take the child, the baby, apart. And in order to do that, it has to be kept viable. It has to be healthy enough and pumping enough. Oxygen needs to be getting to the places it needs to in order to keep things alive. And in order to do that, they have to keep that baby alive. So
you're talking about a healthy baby or...
Yes. A baby that wasn't terminated as it was supposed to be. Because whether it was a failed termination, which, think about that, or it was, we can't get this fetus to this dissection plant fast enough, so we have to keep it alive. So they keep it on a breather and all the rest of the stuff to keep it alive until they can harvest. So we've become so impersonable with human beings that we don't even see a birthed baby that is waiting for termination.
Oh, well, that's
as
why
a human anymore.
That's what, it's funny you say that we've become so desensitized. I think that's why there's so much fucking shooting and killing going on right now.
Video games.
Movies. Yeah.
And think about this, first person point of view.
Yeah.
You have the option to stand back and watch like a god or live it. That's from real facts right there.
Right, and you're just fucking, these kids are just sitting there playing this shit.
Yeah.
And it looks real as fuck, dude.
They
It
just
looks
came up with a
crazy
new
real.
platform. Something 5. Oh, my son just told me. They have the ability, and they have for a long time. And I've been preaching this for a while. You got to be careful who you say it to. So I figure we got a small enough audience. They're able to look at us through the cameras, and they have been for a long time. And they watched us be evolved in the sense that we went from squirming at the screen to being able to pummel some chick's face in because it's bonus points in a video game, and actually have like the sensation and hear the skull break and the flesh smash and the blood splatter.
Ugh.
Right? And you have all this real stuff, and you're doing it in a first person point of view. And what they've done is, if you look at the manufacturers and where these game boards and all that stuff come from, a lot of it's from China, etc. They don't have a problem putting this poison to our children and to our families.
Yeah, but they don't have it over there.
Right. So when we talk about what's in the best interest of America, well, they're willing to say, well, we're going to tell an adult parent, you're not allowed to keep your child from the rainbow flag. Right? And we're going to give your child access to guns galore and death and murder and actually, quite honestly, prostitutes to prostitutes because they're shaking their stuff.
Well, see, that's another good thing that
You
came
know?
of COVID. That's another really good thing that came of COVID is that they were doing this online schooling and the parents were catching on to this shit.
More part of the program because what it did was it gave the ability to say how many parents are actually willing to get involved with what's going on in school, because how many parents actually listen. Number 2, how many parents are actually smart enough to understand what they're listening to. Number 2, so that's 2 steps down. How many people are removed at this point? How many people don't have time to listen? Half the population gone. People that don't understand what they're listening to because it's overwhelming. Half the people gone. Third, your child's in front of you just to get babysat, just like Saturday morning cartoons, because, well, the school's there and they can take care of your kid for you while you're at home.
Yeah, but when these woke ass fucking bitch ass teachers are telling the kid that he's got to take his fucking
gun down from the background,
yeah,
or the flag down,
yes,
the American flag
right,
down or something,
and then it all goes viral. Did you see the one kid where the teacher was like, if you don't take the Trump flag down or something?
Yes.
She says you're going to be in big trouble, and then he just fucking hit the disconnect button.
Remember the...
I loved it.
Not that I even think this about your brother, because I'm not, but remember the despicable white kid with the Trump hat at the pipeline rally that got in the American Indian's face? The Native American's face?
Yeah, it was the red and white one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they found out after they smeared this kid everywhere and ruined his entire life that it was that Native American that was getting in his face, and he was simply there just smiling because he was trying to do the smartest thing, which is not get angry.
Not get confrontational.
Right,
Sure.
so they ruined that kid's life. So what they did after that was they put out the information to those who wanted to find it, that boy was smeared and they ruined his life. So some people got that information.
You get made a shitload of
They
money,
got
too.
the statistics off of those people that looked up and said, who is going to apprehend this? Who's going to click and send? Who's going to copy and save? Because now it tells you whether or not you copied it, how far into the video you copied it.
Yeah.
And if you're online with somebody, and this is where it gets creepy, if you're online with somebody, it'll tell that other person that you just joined or that you're texting while you're with them. I don't want you to know what I'm doing while I'm with you. I've lost complete and total freedom. So what we're doing is we went from, we're teaching it in school, and now parents have to go in school to get involved and find out. And now that's when you call Mothers for Liberty, et cetera, et cetera. Now they're considered radical groups when they're actually just looking out for the kids' best interest and the freedom to keep that stuff out of the schools, right? So now you have all that crap. Now it's gone from the parent has to go into school to find out what's going on, to now we're going to computerize it and bring it home and throw a pilot program out to test the parents and see who's actually going to step forward if we're bringing it in the home. Because now we're not going to make them come to us. We already got those numbers. We're going to bring it to them and see who's willing to hear it and stand up for it. And then we're going to find out what it takes to shut them down and make them shy away, and how to deal with the people that are refusing, boots on the ground, we're not taking no for an answer, how do we handle them? And how do we handle the people that are going, I wonder what happens to people that stand up? They just got all their information.
I'm curious to see, not to change the subject, Donnie, but I'm curious to see what happens in Texas in the next couple of days.
So what they're doing is they're putting barbed wire up and they're changing the rules and the regulations, and what they're doing is they're actually creating a unified understanding that it's time
When you say they are changing the rules and regulations, who are they?
They are meaning
The managerial class?
when you hear Biden's representatives talk and say that this group versus this group.
Right.
This group or this group don't have the same understanding because there's so many gray areas, because there's been so many oversteps on each side.
Well, Abbott supposedly, which I agree with what he's doing, is saying that the federal government has failed to secure our border, and it's my job to keep my people safe, my constituents safe, and he's securing the border. Biden is saying that they can't put the barbed wire up because it's not allowing the border agents to safely and properly do their job. Which is what? To me, it's to secure the border, not process illegals. Right?
Correct.
So,
Job details been changed.
So,
And if we're not willing to accept it for the love of the immigrants coming in, then shut up and get out.
well, so the Biden administration sued the state of Texas, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, where they are telling you, this is where I say all the time: if you're going to read if you're going to read the headline, read the whole article, because the real truth is in the last two paragraphs. So the Supreme Court didn't rule against Texas. They said that the federal government has the right to take the barbed wire down, but they cannot stop you from putting it up. Right? So now, Biden administration is saying, well, we are just going to federalize the Texas state reservists, their, what do you call it, National Guard, and make them federal military instead of National Guard reservists who works for the state that they come from, right? And they're going to federalize them, and then they have to do what Joe Biden says. So now, what I am pondering, because there's 26 states now that are backing Greg Abbott, saying that if they need to send their National Guard to the border, they will.
They're creating a civil war.
I think this is going to be the start of it.
Yeah, it's their problem for it.
But my question has been, and has been for a while, do you think, and anybody out there, I would love to hear your comments, do you think that any enlisted soldier would fire upon an American citizen?
I don't think they're going to have to when the United Nations is brought in. Because all I keep seeing is Constitution, Constitution, Constitution. I don't have. I'm fairly well versed in it, but I also understand that it all goes to pot and out the window once the United Nations steps in.
Is that right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. State of emergency. We see what happens with state of emergency.
Yeah.
All the regular rules. So now, can you imagine stepping that up to the United Nations? Constitution doesn't mean shit. So all these people who are out, muscular, well-educated military vets that are out there talking about the Constitution, I got one thing for you. When the Constitution is not valid because the United Nations is in charge,
Nothing's valid.
nothing's valid. So there goes all of your spiritual patriotism and all the rest of that crap. It's out the window. It's bye-bye. Look, government.
Yeah, but the rules don't exist for them nor us.
How much are you willing to question that? We're not willing to question it now with the vaccine when we did.
But I'm just saying,
We're
when
worried
it comes
about
to
getting
fighting,
shut down because we don't follow a certain platform. And we're just two guys talking.
yeah, talking
This
shit.
is American freedom right here.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, First Amendment. All right.
My man, what's he always say? Look it up for yourself. And so like
My man.
they got the numbers on what we would do if it was pushed on us to give us a vaccine. And to some of us, that vaccine was seen as bodily harm. Or the potential of. Or at least questionable enough that the threat of what could happen to us with the virus was less than the threat of what could happen to us with the medical. So we chose not to. There's a certain mentality that goes with that. There's a certain rationalization.
Yeah, but wait. Let's go back to that, because anybody that says, "Hey,"
And I'm not saying that just because you got it doesn't mean you don't think at all. That's not what I'm saying.
no. But we're gonna start supplying everybody with this so-called vaccine, right? We want everybody to take it. We've given immunity against reparations for the drug companies for this.
Yeah.
So if you have the vaccine, and you were vaccinated, injured, you cannot sue the drug manufacturer.
I mean, when you hear about those, sometimes it happens. They have to cop to something. They have to admit to something because the general public's gonna know Aunt Matilda died from it, from the vaccine. She
Sure.
was perfectly fine. Or my niece actually died from it because she had a reaction to it. So they're gonna have to dumb it down by saying that there's a certain number. But why are we gonna trust them at this point?
Well, at this
Haven't
point,
they
you can't.
proven-
That's just it. You can't trust
Well, no,
them. Right.
But there's some people that do. That's their master.
I know, man.
That's their master.
I know. But I am waiting. I'm curious to see, man.
This
I'm
is real.
following the Texas thing.
And not only is it going to be a civil war, but when you allow people, okay, so what are they looking to do? World Health Organization, all these different groups that oversee a world government, right? So they oversee a world government that's going to obviously handle each country as the same, okay?
Well, did you just see the spokeswoman for the WEF just said that she's like, I don't know what we're going to do now because we no longer have control of the media.
The World Economic Forum has control of the media because when you look at...
Yeah, but she's saying now we don't because there's so many other forms of media with the internet.
No, I disagree.
Well,
I disagree. That's where the biggest deception is, and I mean that not lightly because I think about this often. The biggest deception is thinking that we have control over the media now and that they're only subduing, only capturing, only handling certain things that are coming out of our mouths is considered free speech. But by what I said before about Googling something and come up with 40,000 searches and then you find out that there's only like 3 authors, right? That's being done because we're supposed to think that we're being told everything. When you see the military trains with hundreds of cars and military going down and you see that every once in a while, you're telling me that there aren't 100 how many people that took that same video and shouldn't it be found more often? Because if you click on it, shouldn't it bring you to the same thing? No, it doesn't. It brings you to something else, to the Ukrainian war, to the refugees, to the guy from Star Trek, whatchamacallit, something Spock, where to give the money to the countries. Am I wrong?
No, you're right.
So what does it do? It takes it down the same damn avenue.
Yeah, same rabbit hole.
Yep, same rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But then the situation doesn't get addressed. And what is it again? It's again take a knee to give your money to a impoverished country outside of yours, but not taking care of your own people, because that would be selfish and inhumane. Be humane and give your money and your finances and your heart and your taxes and your resources to another country for people you can't see. Well, guess what? They're telling that other country the same thing, and they're just keeping it. The same thing the gulags did. You farmers, you make the grains, and we're going to collect it. And city folk understand we're collecting the grain from the farmers, and we're going to redistribute to the farmers and the city folk and trust the government. And then after the war, we found out that the government kept the grains and the foods and starved the farmers and the city folk and killed them all.
What I thought
right now.
What I thought was pretty funny is
And that wasn't too long ago.
But that's one of the reasons why we are like, why they're saying that we need to defend, because they have the richest grain fields and all this shit, and it's like, bro, we can grow our own grain.
No, we can't, because we don't have the seeds anymore that they're able to recreate, because we fell into the Monsantos, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. But you know my point though. Like, if we didn't eat no bread that came from fucking Ukrainian wheat, it wouldn't bother me, man.
No, we had the opportunity to do it, but instead we dehabilitated, we destroyed the American farmer. I have a very weird thing because when we went to school, there was a food pyramid, and at the top of that was grain, and then dairy, and then et cetera, right? But now they changed the food pyramid again, and now they're stating that the food pyramid now is not for necessarily human consumption, but the greater good of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it's for even distribution, it's for easier access, it's for sustainable things, it's for easier things brought in, but it's no longer for our health. And then when we look back at the food pyramid, we find out that the food pyramid was altered twice when we were young, and that's because they were trying to promote agriculture. And now we find out that the milk, etc., isn't good for us, and now they've GMO'd the grains and separated the grain, which by definition, when you separate something natural, it's a drug. So now when you separate them, you separate that grain of wheat or whatever else it is, it's now considered a drug. And strangely enough, we find out that when you separate the grain and you separate those different parts, every single one of those pieces of the grain had different chemical values and properties. our body, when you take that apart, now doesn't have all the entire chemical composition to understand it, process it, take it apart, and distribute it through our body because it's been separated. And what is a drug? A drug is something in nature that's been separated. So think about that. All right. So now we've allowed the pharmaceutical companies and everything else to mimic nature and to alter our crops and things. And now we're expecting things to go okay and not to affect us genetically and down the line for our abilities to carry the ability to fight and have an immune system.
Did you see that shit out in Lancaster? There's a an Amish farmer that was selling raw milk, and the FBI and DEA and state police all raided his farm because a couple people got sick from it, and they're saying, well, you're supposed to follow FDA regulations, blah blah blah, you're supposed to homogenize and pasteurize and all that shit. And he goes, well, then it's not raw milk.
And if more people got sick from it, they'd have a stomach for it to handle it.
Well, again, right.
So
but
if it was consumed as natural instead
he's
of sterilized,
advertising for sale raw milk.
right, and some people might not deal so well with it.
But the second you homogenize or pasteurize
It's no longer raw.
it's no longer raw milk.
Yep.
So if you can't handle raw milk,
Yeah.
you know, that was one of the things he was saying. He says, all our people here are fine and healthy, strong young men, building, you know, barns and shit.
Jethro's a big dude.
Dude, them Amish dudes are monsters.
Yeah.
There's
lots
right? But
of
and he's like, you know, and you know they're gonna shut his farm down and probably take him to jail and all this shit over it. But
there was a guy that found out apricot seeds worked on healing a lot of stuff. So he was taking out apricot seeds and he was crushing them up, pressing them, etc., doing things with them. I think he was a boxer. I think I have him on my phone saved. He was a boxer or something. But anyway, he went ahead and he was using the apricot seeds to heal. And he was trying to make a market for it. And at first they made fun of him or whatever else, but then they wiped him out completely financially and just absolutely ruined him.
for sure.
And if you consume part of the apricot seed away from the other, it's dangerous because it's got toxins in it. But when you eat the entire thing, it also has the antitoxins in it. So when we take them apart and we're told that it's a poison that can kill you, yes, because you took it apart. But the way that nature gave it to us, it didn't. But you're trying to make a profit because now that you take this apart and you can say that it has apricot oil in it because you took 1% out of a giant vat of chemicals.
Yeah.
Now you can market it. Or you have to have that amount so that enough of the chemical properties in there actually attached to that, and because there's memory and water, etc., there's chemical things that happen to it because you have that natural substance in there. So there's reasons for them doing it. But as soon as you separate it, it becomes a drug. And when you, like I said, when you separate rye or anything else, you're taking those different properties, which each contain different chemical compounds, apart from each other. And they're there in nature because they're unified to grow. And our bodies are made to be able to consume that substance in a unified manner. And when you take it apart, now we have problems with what we know as diabetes, which is actually our pancreas, etc., not having the ability to produce and rationalize the insulin in the body regularly. And why is that? Because we're consuming things that are not whole information.
Or not natural, yeah.
And based off of nature to chemically mimic it so it's not natural, like you're saying. And then our bodies are trying to understand, how do we have this chemical but not that chemical? So now we have to balance things out. And now it's throwing your flora out of whack, your chemicals to your brain, your hormones out of whack. And why is it? Because man messed with something good. It's pretty wild.
It is pretty wild. Fair. I think it's time to wrap it up. Words of wisdom.
Oh.
I had a good one and I forgot. I should have wrote it down. I think I did write it down out in my work truck. But...
Wow. What you got?
I don't remember. I was hoping you would say something. It would
Words of wisdom. Write it down.
I did. I think I did, but...
I got a book of I actually, with a group of older gentlemen I'm with, I gave them a leather-bound book with a leather strap around it, some antiquated, torn pages, like tea leaf paper. And I had it for a while. I didn't know what I was going to use it for. And I went to a bunch of different groups, and nothing ever felt right. But this group, I burned into the leather the name of their group and everything else, and I gave it to them. And it's called the Book of Wisdom. So the next time I'm there, I'm going to pull some stuff out of that book.
Yeah.
I look to these old guys to be able to teach because they've lived and they've failed. And they've also prospered in many ways. So I think that older people, here's some wisdom. If you're an older person, talk to someone. Don't be afraid.
For sure.
And if you're somebody who's not an older person, talk to an older person. Because they got something to teach you.
I agree.
I think that's my wisdom.
One of my favorite things about my job is
Oh,
getting
yeah.
to talk to old people.
Yeah.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
They've done some shit. Like, you think we got it good? You think you got it hard? Go talk to an old 80-year-old man.
I would hate to be an 80-year-old man who fought for this country and sees what it's gone to.
Oh, for sure.
There's got to be some anger and some letdown and some regret.
Yeah, a lot of wonder. Good night, everybody. See you next week. Oh. Oh no, Bear.